I just bought this 2011 BMW 535i X Drive for $1,000. Previous owner took it to a shop because they couldn't get it running, and the shop told them it needed a new engine. Previous owner, obviously, they declined the service. That's why I have it now. They posted it on Facebook for $5,000. I offered them $1,000 and they took it. Couldn't believe it, honestly. So now it is my problem. I'm going to get it running again, and then we'll figure out if the shop was being honest. The shop says it needs a new engine. Let's figure out if it needs a new engine. If it does need a new engine, we'll either fix it for really, really cheap, or we'll engine swap it. Step one, it's filthy. Previous owner had kids and was a smoker. It smells like smoke. Got just candy all over, packs of cigarettes, 5-hour energies everywhere. The center console doesn't close. It's a mess. So step one, before I diagnose it at all, I don't want to be crawling around in their filth. So we're gonna give it a little bit of a clean. Not a detail, a little bit of a clean. Let's do that now. While I'm cleaning the car, I'm of course looking for goodies. Hopefully the previous owner left anything really cool or something really cool behind. On that note, watch this. That almost killed me the first time. That's not good. All right, let's get cleaning. We got some change. This shit was all underneath the cup holder. All of it. All right, that was disgusting. My hands are filthy. I don't know if the camera caught that. My hands are gross. They're sticky. Like everything in that car, pop, candied, gummies, energy drinks, it's all on my hands now. So I'm gonna go wash them, and then we're gonna get to the fun part of figuring out why it doesn't run. It's, I'll show you in a little bit, but currently just cranks and cranks and cranks. Doesn't start, no pops, no bangs. So we're gonna start with air, fuel, spark, and oil. Gonna make sure it has oil, which I don't know how to do in a BMW. It doesn't have a dipstick. So usually I think you usually check the oil when it's running, which it doesn't. And I also want to check the oil before it runs. So air, fuel, spark, oil, to figure out why it doesn't run. And if it's not air, fuel, spark, then it might be compression. We'll check compression too. We'll check it all. Fuses. There's a long list of things to check. Let's start. Before we get started on any of the checks that I just mentioned, I figured I'd check the codes, see what we got. I know the battery was dead when I first bought this, so I imagine there's probably a lot of codes related to that. So we'll check them, see if there's anything interesting, clear them, and then continue from there. All right, we're plugged in, car's on. See what we got for codes. Looks like we only got one code actually. We got evap system leak. Evap system leak, so we'll just clear the codes and move on. Okay, so while I was checking the codes, I checked the fuel gauge. It says it has a quarter tank, so we're gonna assume it has fuel. We're gonna, as of now, assume that it has good fuel. So I'm gonna move on to checking spark. So I'm just going to tear into the engine a little bit, get down to the coil packs, see if we are getting some signal to those. If we have that, I'm gonna assume we have air as well. I can check the air box for blockages, but I doubt that's the issue. So we'll check spark. While I'm in there, I might check compression, unless we get some answers from the spark. So let's dig in. Alright, got the spark plugs out. The coil packs themselves look fine. Doesn't mean they're working or all of them are working. But what I do notice is that these spark plugs, are all pretty fucked up. In particular, cylinder number 4 here. It might be hard to tell on the camera. You can see a little glare. It's wet. Can't tell if it's oil. Oh, let me back up. Can't tell if it's oil or fuel. But I think what I'm gonna do before I continue is I have all the spark plugs off. I'm gonna just do a compression test, and that's gonna tell us if the motor's bad. Even if the motor's bad, I want to get it running to make sure it runs before I yank it out. So, compression test, let's do it.
All right, before I test compression, I want to turn off the fuel. I don't want a bunch of fuel spraying in the cylinders while I'm testing. So, I looked it up, and this 20 amp fuse here should disable our fuel. There we go. Got our 20 amp fuse. Come on. And you can see the fuse is good. So at least, one fuse checked out of 100. Let's go test compression. Alright, I got all my spark plugs out. You saw that already. I think I have the right thread on this compression tester. I do. Alright, let's get you set up to watch this. Because I gotta go push the button. Zero. Interesting. Zero compression on 1. Let's see if that's a fluke. Maybe I fucked it up. I mean, we're in there. All right, well, let's try 2. All right, testing cylinder number 2.
Anything on one or on two? All right, we got what do we got? 5, 10, 15, 20. So we got about 157 on two, which also means that we actually have 0 compression on one. We're gonna test them all. $1,000 BMW, 0 compression? There's no way. I'm hoping you guys can hear on camera how bad this motor. Oh my God. 185 on 3. We're going for 4. 4 is the one that I thought was gonna suck, with the fact that the spark plug was covered in oil. All right, cylinder 4. Drum roll. We got problems on cylinder 1 and problems on cylinder 4. We'll probably go back to 1. We'll retest it. Let's go 5 and 6, of course. Let's test them all first. All right, cylinder 5. That sounds like no compression to me too. Oh, fucking Christ. Wow. Boys, this engine, real fucked. I don't even need a test spark. I know why it doesn't run. It doesn't have any compression. This thing's trying to run on 1 cylinder. 2.5, 1.5. Let's see what 6 has. All right, cylinder 6. All right, what do we got? So we got 125 on 6. I'm gonna retest 1. We gotta test it. We gotta retest 1. Here we go, retesting cylinder 1. Just cause I'm in denial. There's no compression. All right. There we have it. Cylinder 1, 0 compression. 2, oh fuck, I forgot all the numbers. It's all right, you guys know, that's all that matters. Well, I really don't think there's any point on continuing any other tests, right? We have 0 compression on 1, 160 on 2, 185 on 3, 0 on 4, 75 on 5, and 0 on 6. I'll put them on the screen right here. I don't remember what they were because I got bad memory. There's no point in testing anything else. The motor's fucked. The next step is to pull it. We're gonna pull it, tear it apart, see what's actually wrong with the motor. All right, quick PSA. If you have, well, first, BMWs have a bolt instead of a stud and a nut to hold on wheels. So when you take all of them off and you can't get the wheel off, put one bolt back in, not all the way. That way, when I smack the tire with a mallet and it unstucks itself, it doesn't just fly off. It'll, catch on the stud here, or on the bolt. Now I need a mallet. Here we go. Now you know. That one wasn't stuck. All right, I realize I really haven't given you guys a tour of the shop. Right now we have this open spot on the right over here. So this is gonna be parts bay. Everything we take off will end up here. Let's keep going. Wait till you guys see under this car. I'm gonna keep taking off skid plates before I show you though. This thing is so caked in oil that it's like literally flimsy here. Like if we go to the clean side, it's pretty rigid. More broken plastic. Fog lights. One's broken. Woo. Okay. Bumper. Foam bumper. Crash bar. Other bumper. Things, cross brace things. One fan shroud. It's going well. More ducting. More plastic. I almost forgot. I'm going to take out the battery just to make sure we don't have any electrical problems or shorts. I've had this battery out before, so all this stuff is already loose. FYI with the BMW trunks, if you don't have your battery connected, you have to crawl in through the back seat to open it. So I'm just gonna leave it open. Fans out. Whoop, whoop. We're getting there. Figured I'd give you guys an update on the parts pile. So far, a lot of plastic. And an update on what the engine bay looks like. You can see pretty clearly our many coolers, AC, power steering, radiator, and we do have another one underneath. I'm not sure what they all are, but we'll find out. AC condensers out. Top one was an oil cooler. Apparently this thing has two radiators, one in the middle, one on the side. We are back. It is the next day. I have new clothes on and fresh hands. A lot of comments on the last video telling me to wear gloves. You're absolutely right, I should be, but I hate gloves. So for now, we're rocking no gloves. Quick update on where we are. So most of the front end's torn apart. We still have radiator, power steering cooler, and intercooler. Once that's off, I think we'll have plenty of access to wiring, motor mounts, anything else that we gotta take off to get the motor out. I haven't decided if I'm leaving the transmission in or bringing it out with me. Really, I'm gonna do whatever's easiest. So after the front end here, I will be going underneath to do the skid plate and the axles and whatever else needs to come out along the way. So, back to it. I just said I was not gonna wear gloves. This car is caked in oil. So I'm gonna go get gloves. All right, I don't have latex gloves, but I have this. So, listen, I don't want any I told you so's about not wearing gloves. It's just because this motor's caked in oil and everything I touch is also caked in oil. So, I'm gonna try it for you, just for you. Radiator, this thing, there's probably an easier way, but it was awful. Awful to take out. Whew. All right, this one, I had to do a little Google search on how to get this off. I thought it would use like a fuel quick disconnect tool, but it's actually just built into it. I'll show you guys, I'll show you that on the video, or I'll show you the hose later. This thing, got it out. Plastic, more plastic. Intercooler's out. That is the last one. We can get a clear view of the engine. Let's go take a look. Okay, those of you that own an N55, you'll know that there's a couple common oil leaks. One of them being the oil filter housing slash cooler here. And you can tell that that did a number on the front here. I mean, this is like, now excuse me, no gloves on here. Look at that. That is something else. A couple tips and tricks while we're here. One, intercooler pipe. The charge piping, intercooler piping, whatever you want to call it. So this clip latches in like 3-5 spots maybe. You can see it clips there, and on this back piece. When you take this clip out, you have to push the charge pipe and intercooler together for the clip to come out. I fought with that for a while, so that's tip number one. When you're doing these power steering lines, you're gonna have this white clip on the front here, and then when you take that off, you're gonna push the power steering line in, press on this quick release until it clicks, and then you can just slide it right off. So that is the tip and trick with the power steering line. You don't need any special tool. And that was my tip slash trick for the intercooler piping. You just need a plier, you don't need a special tool for that. So just push it together, pull the clip out, and then similar process with the power steering line. Take the white clip off the front, push together, push in that quick release, and then it'll come right off. So yeah, that is the front clip taken off. I mean, everything is caked, dude. Oil everywhere. That's not even oil, that's just, it's awful. Wowzers. From here, I don't really have too much of a plan of attack. I think I'm going to leave as much on as I can. So really, if I can get the transmission bell housing bolts, or if that's a pain, and I just do motor mounts, transmission mount, drive shaft, front axles. Well, it was obviously a mistake cleaning the ground. I'll try to film under the car a little bit just to show you how ugly it is under there. I don't really have a wide enough angle lens. This car is a mess. All right, I told you I'd try to get you a peek at underneath the car. It looks a lot like the front of the car. So here's the transmission. You can see it's got a nice little coating on it. Moving over to the oil pan. That also has a nice little coating on it. Bell housing, dirty. Everything is dirty. All right, let me show you what I did here. So we take the lower control arm out from its home. We take the lower strut bolt out, and that lets us take the axle out from under the strut here. And then you just get a pry bar and pry it out. Right, axle number one out. I use a pretty big pry bar to get these out because it's a pain in the ass with a small one. Axle one out, just gotta do the other side, it's the same exact thing. All right, on the passenger side, we have this long shaft. So taking it out is a little harder. All I had to do differently
was take the top 3 bolts of the strut off, so I had some more wiggle room to maneuver this. So both axles are out. So I was crawling around underneath the car and I've decided that the transmission is going to come out with the engine. It seems pretty awful to get to the bell housing bolts, so I'm not going to deal with it. That being said, the exhaust is going to come off next. There's a couple pieces of heat shielding underneath the car I'm going to take off. The rear drive shaft is going to come off. It'll stay in the car, just resting on some heat shield. Hopefully that doesn't bite me in the butt. Wiring. I believe most of the wiring stays on the engine, and there's like 3 plugs on the driver's side that just unclip and fold over. I'm gonna miss something. There's definitely something I'm missing, but that's where I'm starting. Unfortunately, without us having a lift, if I get a lift, you guys will be able to see under the car better, and I want that for both of us, honestly. Not being able to really show you the underneath the cars is disappointing. Obviously, I could get like a cheaper version like Quick Jacks, but I had this shop built at 16 feet, so I can fit any lift I want. That being said, I'm gonna get under the car and you're gonna just watch me toss some parts out from underneath. I don't even know how long it's been. I was fighting the exhaust for a long time. That shit was rusty. The exhaust killed way more time than I thought it was going to take. I live in the Midwest of the USA and we get a lot of rusty cars here, so I should have known better that the exhaust was going to be easy. Nothing is on these rusty cars. That being said, I am tired. We will pick this back up tomorrow, which is right now. All right, quick update on where we are. So it is day 3. I'm in a set of new clothes again. Overnight, I Googled one question and I was looking up the preferred lift points on the motor. Turns out they have their own jack points. The front of the engine has a spot where you put in the tow hook, and the back of the engine, you take off the starter and use a hole right above the starter to lift the engine. So to do that, we have to take off the intake and take off the starter. So we're gonna do that next. Oh, me taking off the front clip here was so nice. Being able to look, I'm standing above the motor. This is fantastic. All right, 7 bolts holding the intake on. Before those 7 bolts, we gotta get the wires out of the way here. Another piece of charge pipe that connected to the throttle body. Let's get this out of the way. Whoops. Another vacuum line here. There we go. Okay, here's one more wire. This is the throttle body wire on the bottom. And we have our intake manifold. All right, starter's next. Battery's already disconnected, so I don't got to worry about shorting anything here. So I'm gonna disconnect the power wire, and then we have 2 bolts, and then I'll show you guys what we're looking at here. Oh, they are joined together. Okay, I gotta take the alternator wire off as well. I thought they would be separate wires, but they're just joined together. So that's gotta come off. And I can't take that power wire off unless I take the alternator off. There we go. Took me a while, but I found a good spot. All right. 1 serpentine belt. Okay, it was. Okay. So what I needed to get to this whole time was this. All right, well, alternator's off. We're gonna put this oil cooler back in place. So I know, don't gotta worry about it leaking. All right, just snug. Okay, all that to get the alternator wire off because it's connected to the starter wire and I needed the starter wire off. Now we're still connected. The only thing this loom is still connected to is the transmission. So as I'm pulling it out, I'll get the last of that wiring out. Oh, there we go. All right, I got both of them. Got the starter out. Okay, it is actually the end of day 3 here. I am missing a tool. Totally my fault. I should have looked into this before. But the tow hook that comes on the 5 Series is not the same tow hook that comes on the 3 Series. And I need the 3 Series tow hook to pull the engine. Let me show you the hole I'm talking about here quick. Okay, so this hole right there is the lift point on the front of the motor. And where we took the starter out, the hole right there in the middle of the screen at the top left of where the starter would be is the rear lift point. So the rear one, you just put like a bolt through and use that. This front one, you are supposed to use. The tow hook on the 5 Series is not the same tow hook as the 3 Series, and they decided to make the 3 Series tow hook the one to use to pull the motor. I am completely ready to pull it. Everything except for the motor mount, transmission mount are loose. I've double, triple, quadruple checked. That being said, I'm sure there could be something hidden that I can't see until I start moving stuff. But from what I can see, I'm ready to pull it. I just need the tow hook. So I'm going to either order one or find one at a junkyard. Either way, it could be tomorrow that I pull it, or it could be a week. Depends on when I get a tow hook. So for now, I guess I'll go start editing this video. All right guys, we're back on day 4. I had to stop last time because I did not have the right tow hook for the front engine point lifting location. The one that comes on the 5 Series is bigger than the one that comes on the 3 Series, so I got that. So I believe I'm 95% ready to pull this motor. I think we get the engine hoist hooked up, and then it should just be motor mounts and tranny mount, and we should come right out. I don't see anything else that's attached. I'm sure along the way while I'm pulling it out there might be a few things. So let's get this engine out. It's been a long time coming. Engine's off the motor mounts. I gotta take off this side so I have some wiggle room. I won't be able to get it past the steering shaft with it on.
Oh yeah. All right, that's one motor mount out. I think I mentioned this before, but one of the motor mounts decided, or one of the motor mount bolts decided to snap rather than come out. All right, transmission cooler lines, transmission mount, and out she comes. And then I got to remember that these wires are on top of the transmission once I get it farther out. All right, out comes the motor, I think. Okay. Okay, I ended up having to take the cat off. It was getting stuck on some heat shielding and a cross member. Should be smooth sailing from here. Okay, ground on the back of the motor I gotta take off. Found a power steering hose. I'm just gonna take the overflow off with it. Woo. Okay. We are out. We did it. I'm sweating. Hard work. Alright, engine and training separated. Everyone say hi to Keith. This is Keith. Alright, hard part's done. Transmission is off. Now we take off this torque converter and the flex plate and we can put it on the engine stand. All right, this is where Keith is my savior here. He's gonna hold the torque converter as I take out this last bolt. Get you a Keith in your life, you know? Out. Torque converter's off. Next, flex plate, and then we get it on the engine stand. And our flex plate's off. Now I think we're gonna do these 4 holes for our engine stand, and then the fun begins. The real fun. Engine's on the engine stand. We have to take off wire harness and accessories. After we take off the wiring harness and accessories, we're gonna drain the oil. That'll tell us a little bit about what's going on inside of the engine. After that, take off the oil pan. You can see if we see any failed bearings, any rod bearings there, or crankshaft bearings. Then we'll take off the heads. We'll have our full picture. So, wiring and accessories, let's do it. All right, gloves are back on. I forgot how disgusting this engine was in the span of one day. We got the coil pack harness off. Knock sensors. All right, we're on the other side of the motor now. We're on the hot side. So we're gonna take off the motor mount, turbo, and the water pump. And then I believe it's time to drain the oil. All right, Keith did that one.
I got it. You're not taking
together.
You're not taking my limelight. Okay.
You're just bending it.
Is it? That's not bending. You're bending it. Oh my god. That's crust.
All right, we officially broke the second or third piece on this car. The first one being the motor mount bolt that snapped. Second one, the coolant line that goes to the turbo. I believe it's the return coolant line. It's so rusted into the turbo that we broke the flange off the hard line rather than the hard line coming off. So just another gift from the Midwest of the USA. Ooh, tool. Nice. Ooh, heavy.
Yeah.
Keith pointed out something that I almost forgot. That the turbo, can't really show you, the inlet's too small, but no shaft play. I mean, it's really good. Happy with that. This hose here is the one that broke the flange itself broke off before we could pry it out of the turbo, so we will have to replace that. All right, we got a little bit of a side quest going on here. Trying to get this coolant return line out of the turbo. Actually, that's kind of wrong. Oh, you got it. Oh.
You say you got it.
Oh.
No, certainly not.
All right, we did get the hose out, albeit in pieces, but that's all right. Cheap hose is way better than a turbo. Back on day 2. We're gonna drain fluids, starting with this front diff here, and then we're gonna drain the oil. You may be wondering why I'm gonna drain the oil with the engine at such an odd angle. Believe it or not, this is how the engine sits inside the car. The oil pan is actually flat on the bottom right now, so this is the angle that I'm draining it at, so everything's collected at the bottom. After fluids, I'll take off the oil pan and we'll take a peek-see from the bottom. After that, we'll go back to the top side, take off valve covers, take off heads, and by then we will definitely have our answer. Let's get rolling. Just gonna quick make sure that this fill plug comes out. If you're doing this in your car, make sure your fill plug comes out before your drain plug, because if you can't get your fill plug out and you drain it, you're in trouble. All right, drain and fill plug going back in, and then we'll drain the oil. Got a big drain pan here and a little one. The little one's open on the top so I can see the fluid. I wanna see what this oil looks like. As soon as this is getting a little full, I'll switch to that one. Don't forget to take your cap off. Initial reaction of the oil is it's really old and black, but I don't see any froth and I don't see any metallic shavings. So honestly, not exactly what I expected, but a very good sign. I forgot to show you guys before I cleaned it, but the drain plug didn't have anything on it either. Honestly, the oil looking at the way it does gives me a little hope for this engine. Before, I thought this was going to be full of bearing material, but it's not. So that leads me to believe that we definitely have a top end issue. But still, we're gonna start with the bottom. We're gonna take the front diff off, take the oil pan off, and take a little look-see there. This half. All right, I'm gonna turn the motor over. Let's see if we see anything funky or hear anything. All right, what I can tell you so far is I hear a lot of noise from the timing chain. All right, I'm gonna flip the motor back over so we can take the heads off. Oh, nothing's holding on, just me. Oh, look at that. Look, oh. Okay, let me get the camera and show you guys what we got. We found it. You see how this one's facing us and that one's facing forward? Came right off. Snapped that bolt. So our low compression problem caused by the cam phaser break-in. Cam phaser, cam gear. This does mean a piece of our bolt is in our cam, and we're gonna have to take that apart to see if we can get that out. I don't know how long this engine was sitting, but there is some surface rust buildup on these cam lobes. Well, all I can say is that hopefully when CTA says that their tool is for an N55, I guess there better be more than one N55, because their tool does not work for this one. And it ended up being easier for me to just use their one top piece and an adjustable wrench as a slide hammer to take it out. So that was very disappointing because it was not a cheap tool, but a little ingenuity and we got it out. So I'm gonna mark our injectors 1 through 6 front to back to match the cylinder that they were in. And I'm gonna have to get them flow tested before I put them back in. I, 1, want to make sure they're good, and 2, I've heard some stories that they break pretty easily. So I'm just gonna go ahead and get all 6 flow tested, and I'll let you know the results on that. Okay, after that disaster, I have the injectors out and numbered in order. Take these out, align our intake cam to TDC, and take our head off. Okay, our crank should be at TDC. Our exhaust cam isn't because it's not hooked up. Let me see if I can turn it with this thing. I don't know. Oh man, that's not good. The cam gear is seized, or not the cam gear, the camshaft is seized. Oh, maybe that's why the bolt broke. The camshaft itself seized up, and that's why the bolt broke. Cause like I can move this side easy peasy, but this side, I mean, I'm putting some work into it and it don't move. So we're gonna have to take all of these out, and that explains a little bit more of why that bolt broke. Forgive me. Okay, when I took the camshaft off, I did it incorrectly. You're supposed to take these springs out first, which obviously you saw I did not. So do not follow my lead there. Definitely do it right. Hopefully I didn't fuck up anything too bad there. I did put the rollers back in so I could take those off correctly and show you that. But yeah, the camshaft. So don't take the camshaft off the way I did. You have to take the springs off first at the top nut or top bolt here. There is a special tool for it. I highly recommend it, or you could strip out the bolt. Don't do what I did. I'm sure you all saw the clip where I could not turn this whatsoever, but I could very easily turn the exhaust side. A couple of the ledges that we ride on here are very, very scored. They're very rough. Like you can see this one, that's pretty shiny, that's pretty smooth. This one you can see is very, very scored, very, very rough. Well, this one's very, very clean. So that one's good, that one's not good. Same with this one, is very, very unhappy. These middle two look like we got some oil starvation, and the camshaft like welded itself to it, or at least scored it up enough that it could not freely turn. So because of the scoring there, because the camshaft couldn't spin freely, that's why our bolt broke. So, like many guessed, it looked like we had some oil starvation issues, which caused the camshaft to seize, which caused that camshaft bolt to break. On top of that, the camshaft seized so much that it broke the cap that was holding it on. One of them, obviously, it scored just as much as the other side. I'm definitely assuming oil starvation issues because these camshaft lobes are rusty. I'm not too sure. It concerns me that our camshaft would be rusty because it means that it'd have to be sitting here without oil for quite some time. Again, please take it off correctly. I know I did not. Do not do what I did there. Okay, so that's how you would have properly taken off the rest if I wouldn't have messed up the camshaft to begin with. Another quick thing is we take a look at my, I believe this is called the eccentric shaft. This spins rough as well. I mean, this is like, I don't know if you can hear it. We will have to change the bearings on this as well. We're gonna leave it on for now and just take the head off. Everything's being a little bit difficult today. I ended up having to chase these threads. I did make sure that these bolts matched the ones in the valve cover, but for some reason, these were not going in the hole, so I just thread chased them, and now everything's working out great. So yeah, just, you know, one of those days where it's not going too smooth. But our cam gear's locked in place. I can take this bolt off, I can take our timing chain off, and I can take the head off. Let's do it. And that's what one of these is supposed to look like. No teeth broken, looking good. Whew. Getting a new one of these, that's for sure. Okay, heads off. First impressions is dirty. We got a lot of carbon. Okay, let's turn this motor over without the head and see what it does. Cylinder walls look good. Very, very usable. The pistons and the cylinder walls look fantastic. If our valves are fine on the head, then the repair's looking pretty snazzy. What we do need to find out, I need to find what oil passage goes to the intake cam and make sure it's not clogged. So we'll see where the oil feed is. I might have to look it up, but let's take a look at the head. All right guys, bottom of the head. Looking at the valves, I don't see any issues. I think we got so lucky that the camshaft seized with all of our intake valves either closed or barely open enough that nothing tapped and broke. I mean, this is the dream scenario of some sort of timing failure and not having any lifters damaged. This one here, this is the exhaust lifters. This is just, the cam is still in, the cam is holding these open. The top ones right now are the intake side. And I don't see any damage. They're crusty, they need to be cleaned. But this is best case scenario. This is the camshaft ledge that I was showing you guys before. This is where the camshaft rides. Unfortunately, it's built into the head. If a machine shop cannot save this, I will have to buy a whole new head. Let's assume best case scenario. If I can take this to a machine shop and have my camshaft resurfaced, that it's usable again, and if they can resurface my camshaft ledge and that's usable again, all I'm out right now is camshaft caps and bolt and the camshaft gear bolt. That is best case scenario. Obviously a bunch of gaskets and fluid, there's way more to it. So that's issue number 1. Is this head salvageable? If it's not, I need to buy a new head. I need to buy a new camshaft. The easiest solution would to just be a brand new or a remanufactured or maybe even a used complete head from maybe like eBay and just throw it on along with new gaskets and a new timing chain and call it good. I'm going to do some digging and see if this head is salvageable, if the camshaft is salvageable, and maybe we struck gold. So our valves look good, our cylinder walls look good, the top of our pistons look good. Dirty, but good. The last thing I want to check is I want to flip this motor over and check our rod bearings. Oh, that looks so good. Guys, the rod bearings look fantastic. This looks... The crankshaft looks good. The rod bearing looks good. Smooth. Let me try my fingernail. Yeah, I don't catch on anything on this rod bearing. This is nuts. I don't think I could have got any luckier. I mean, this one looks nuts. I'll check one more just to make sure. But my God, if all my valves are good and I just need a camshaft, even a bare head I checked is $400 remanufactured. I mean, that's nuts. I'll check one more quick. I mean, even the second one is fantastic. Look at that. That's the cleanest used bearing I've ever seen. Now I'm just putting these back on just hand tight. I know I have to lube up these bearings, and I probably have to replace these bolts. I imagine these are torque to yield bolts, but hand tight so that I don't have to worry about my piston falling out. I don't think it would, but well, I don't think that could have gone any better. I mean, okay, there's always a better scenario, but for my cylinder walls, for my piston heads, my rod bearings all look immaculate. For my valves to look usable, if the valves don't seal, I don't see any huge dents in them. I'll clean them up and look again, but if they don't seal, maybe I just have to lap them, right? So for my valves to look good, the bottom end looks fantastic. We just have to figure out why the oil starvation happened to the intake cam in the first place and make sure that that's fixed. 2, we either have to have a machine shop resurface our cam and our ledge so that the head is usable and the camshaft is usable. If that doesn't happen, then we have to buy a new head and a new camshaft. And then regardless of whether the head's usable or not, we need a bunch of gaskets to stop all of the oil leaks that happened, a bunch of new bolts. A lot of bolts are torqued to yield so that when you torque them the first time, they're stretched and you have to buy a new bolt. So we're gonna buy all new bolts for whatever is necessary. And we're looking good. I just flabbergasted that our intake cam seized in the perfect position for all of the intake valves to be slightly open, closed, in a non-interference position. It's nuts to me. I also have a very big mess to clean. I have all of my tools out, from pulling the engine to tearing the engine apart. My shop is a disaster.
We have boxes of parts. We have boxes from eBay, we have boxes from Amazon, and we have boxes from FCP Euro. We got used parts that were way too expensive new from eBay. We have all sorts of gaskets, fluids, bolts from FCP Euro, and we have some cleaning supplies from Amazon. So I'm gonna get all this open, lay it out, show you what we got, and we'll continue. All right, we have everything unpacked. It was quite a lot. It made quite a mess. I'm not gonna go over everything individually. We got lots of gaskets, we got timing chain, we got sprocket, we got our new used new to me head. We have new bolts. We have new hoses for the turbo. We bought some tools. I now have a pressure blaster so we can clean the head or the intake ports if we need to. I bought something to measure the angle for when we're tightening bolts. I don't really think we'll use this for this project. I don't plan on taking the pistons out of the block, but if we do, I have some ring compressors. Here's what I got for cleaning. We have some Scotch-Brite, we got some plastic scrapers, some bristle brushes for a drill, and then we have a bunch of degreaser. After we get everything assembled, I have a bunch of fluids and filters to put everything back together happily. So we have a new transmission filter with fluid, new front diff fluid, new coolant, new oil and filter. We got a new air filter, we got a new cabin air filter, and we have new spark plugs. So we got maintenance items, we got cleaning items, and we got rebuild items. Now we finally get to do the fun part of cleaning. We got to clean the block, and we have to clean the engine bay. Both are filthy, and I will not be putting them back in the car the way they are. So now what's probably going to be a couple hours for me of cleaning will be a nice little 5-second montage for you. All right, you're currently looking at the driver's side of the engine bay. We are going to clean this side first, and then I'll clean the other side, and yeah, easy peasy. Last really good wipe down. All right, this turned out way better than I thought it was going to turn out. I really didn't think that there was so much aluminum under all of that oil and gunk. I mean, it's still a little dirty, but this looks pretty good. All right, we're going to tackle cleaning the front and the hot side of the engine quick. All right, we're going to do the intake side of the engine now. Okay, some afters. Obviously, like I said, it's not perfect. I'll get a close-up look. I didn't do perfect, but it is much, much better. We'll be able to see any issues in the future. This side didn't clean up nearly as well as the other side, but again, not going for perfection. All right, unfortunately, the cleaning of the top of the block and the bottom of the block was out of focus the entire time. So I'll just quick go over what I did. I pretty much used the same tools that I cleaned the engine bay and the block with, just a Scotch-Brite, a plastic scraper, and the drill brush. Do not use the brass wire wheels on the aluminum block or the head. It left scratch marks. Probably won't be able to see them. It doesn't leave deep, insane gouges, but if you get pretty rough with it, it will. So stick with the plastic scraper, Scotch-Brite, and the wire brush. That'll do just fine. All of the stuff you see on top of the block here, like this black stuff, is completely flat. I can't feel it. I can't scrape at it with my fingernail, so it'll seal just fine. Just kind of stained into the aluminum. So we're done with the top of the block. Let's go clean the oil pan. Okay, last thing to clean before I think we start assembling the engine. Oil pan. This thing's filthy, like really bad. Like really bad. This is the worst, the dirtiest part of the car. There's so much oil still in here, but it's so sludgy. I don't even consider it oil. It's just straight gross sludge. Try to get most of it out before I spray degreaser in here. There we go. That is a clean inside. Now we gotta clean the outside. Here's a little after shot on the oil pan. little oil left over in there, but I'll clean it one more time before I put it on. So I'm not too worried about the little residual oil, but turned out pretty nice. I don't think it turned out quite as nice as the block and the engine bay, but it turned out nicer than I thought it would. We don't have too much to do on the bottom of the engine here, but I am going to check our bearing clearance with some plasti gauge. If they're out of spec, I obviously will replace the rod bearings. But the hope is I'm just going to check these two. If they're in spec, then I'm going to keep the bearings, replace the bolts, and we'll do the same on the other ones. We're going to take it apart, clean it, get some fresh lubricant in there for the first start, and replace the rod bolts. So let's take off the connecting rod here, clean our bearing, check our clearance, and we'll go from there. So we got our surfaces clean. Now we apply the plasti gauge across the entire surface, side to side, not lengthwise. So you get your plasti gauge, you can just pinch it off with your fingernail to the length you need, lay it across. With the plasti gauge laid across, you put your caps back on. We're just tightening them down with the old bolts. They are torque to yield, so if you tighten it down with the new bolts and you take it apart to get the plasti gauge out and to do the reading, you would technically have to buy new bolts again. So use the old bolts for this part. Make sure you don't rotate the crankshaft at this point with the plasti gauge on, or it'll smear it and you'll get a bad reading. So now we're going to tighten them 20 Newton meters, and then 70 degrees, and then 70 degrees again. So here's 20 Newton meters, and then 70 degrees. Now we do our second set of 70 degrees. We did our 20, our 70, and our 70. Now we take it off and we can read our plasti gauge. So we got our plasti gauge on our crankshaft so we can measure our clearance. So our plasti gauge measuring here is from 25 to 76 thousandths. And as long as we're in between 21 to 71 thousandths, that means we're good. You just hold up this little measurement to your plasti gauge on your crank, and as long as it's in between the correct range, you are good. So let's see if we can get that on camera. Kind of hard to pick up here, but our plasti gauge is right in the middle, and if we hold it up, we are right at that 51 thousandths range. So we are basically dead center in the middle of the range. On both of these, our rod bearing clearance is perfect. We're good to go. Now we're just gonna clean that plasti gauge off with some brake clean. It wipes right off. And now we can lube up our crank, lube up our bearing, and we're ready to put our rod bolts back in. I have some Redline engine assembly lube. I use this for the Chevelle LS3 engine build, and I'll use it for the N55 as well. So we're just gonna push our rod off the crank. Be generous, no need to ruin your engine on first start due to lack of lube here. We'll crank over the engine to make sure there's oil, but better safe than sorry. All right, so let's get our rod back in place. All right, we're lubed up. We got our new bolts going in. And we can torque this down for the final time. So once again, 20 Newton meters, 70 degrees. And that is how you place your rod bearings, check your clearance, and tighten down your new rod bolts. I'm going to do the same on the rest here, just to make sure they're lubed and got new bolts. And let's take our oil pump off so we can get to number 1 here. All right, took off our oil pump so we can get to the last 2 cylinders, 1 and 6 here. Clean, lube, now we can assemble. All right, there we have it. Bottom end of the block is assembled. I'll put the oil pump back on quick and then it'll be assembled. Our 2 shorter bolts are 10 Newton meters and 90 degrees, and then our longer bolt is 10 Newton meters and 180 degrees. So let's do 10 Newton meters first. Now we're just gonna do 90 degrees by eye. So we'll go from here, straight down, and then this one will go from here to straight down. Okay, oil pump torqued. Next, we have this sprocket here, and this is 20 Newton meters, and then 45 degrees. Put my torque wrench on, hold it with my leg here, and we'll just do 45 degrees. There we go, there's 45. All right, and then these 2 little ones are just 4 Newton meters, or Yeah, 4 Newton meters. That's why you don't do that. Well, that serves me right. I got lazy and I ugga-dugged a very small aluminum bolt and it broke. Luckily, I already have extractor bits, so I extracted our old bolt. I mean, this bolt's not really doing too much. So I just went to the local hardware store and I bought a couple bolts to replace both of them with. And this time, really, just hand tighten these. Yeah, nice and snug. So don't do what I did there. Don't be lazy, because then you have to make a hardware run and it takes longer. All right, we're done on the bottom end for now. We took off the rods from the crankshaft. The bearings were good, so we checked clearances. The clearance was good, so we lubricated and installed new rod bolts. Our oil pump is torqued down. I still have to replace the timing chain, but we're done on the bottom end for now. I mean, we'll flip it back over and we'll put on our windage tray or our oil drip tray, whatever you guys call it, and then our oil pan. But for now, before we do that, we need to flip over, put our head on, and do our timing. Hopefully our last wipe down of our mounting surface here, and then I'm going to lube up the cylinder walls. So I'm just using normal engine oil for this. Now we'll wipe down this mounting surface. Okay, we're going to take our intake side apart correctly this time so we can look at all our mounting surfaces and lube them up, and we'll put it back together. So I bought the tool to do this correctly this time. Okay, I did it that first time just to make sure I knew what I was doing, but you can see here we got that lever on the spring, and then we tighten this top piece to the top of the spring. It latches on like right here, and then we just squeeze together and it latches in place. And with that, you can see that the tension is off the eccentric shaft roller thing. And now we can just undo this top bolt with no spring tension on it, and it comes off easy peasy. Okay, with the bolt out, you just squeeze, release the lever, and slowly release that tension. Take the tool off the spring. Showed you how to do it. Now I'm gonna just get these other ones zipped off. Okay, there we go. Tool worked, got all 6 springs off. I'll need it again to get the springs back on, but for now we can take off our camshaft. I'm struggle busting today. I paused the camera to make sure I didn't have to take off anything besides these eccentric springs, levers, whatever they're called. And then I forgot to turn the camera back on and I took the camshaft off. That's the bad news. I took the camshaft off without recording. Good news is the ledge looks fantastic. The camshaft itself looks fantastic, and all of the caps are smooth as well. So our new camshaft ledge, new camshaft, and our caps are great. Unfortunately, as you can see right there, I did break the eccentric shaft. It had tension and it snapped really fast against this stopper, and that lever broke off. Luckily, in that pile of stuff over there, I have our old one. So I'll use these bearings. They're much smoother, but I'm just gonna have to use our old eccentric shaft. So I'm gonna take off the exhaust camshaft, take off the eccentric shaft, and as long as the exhaust camshaft looks good, I should be able to torque the head down and start lubing and assembling. Now this is probably gonna be under tension, unlike the intake because we took the springs off. This you want to loosen the bolts equally so that the pressure is released. Okay, let's see what our exhaust camshaft looks like. And our exhaust side looks fantastic. There's the bottom ledge, there's the camshaft, and our top ledge. With the exhaust camshaft out of the way, now we can replace our eccentric shaft since I broke this one. So right now this rolls freely. Should be no tension on this. Okay, now with the eccentric shaft off, we're going to take these 2 studs off, and then we can get to all our head bolts. So let's bolt down our head. Okay, exciting times. It's kind of been up in the air until this point on whether everything was really gonna work out with this used head, but I think we're good. So I'm dropping these washers into place. 4 smaller ones on the outside, big ones on the inside. Let's get them all snug so we can torque them. Okay, here we go. So we're starting here in the middle. We go 30 degrees, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So you go inside and you go out, out, out. And they're all 30 Newton meters. So we're at 30 foot-pounds all the way around. Now we do 90 degrees. All right, and what I'm gonna do as I do the 90 degrees is just quick put one little mark next to them. The bolt's recessed and they're black, so my black sharp is not gonna really show. But if it is marked next to them, I will know which ones I've done. And since I'm going around twice, eventually I'll have 2 marks next to each bolt. I really like doing the Sharpie mark. For instance, this thing takes a while to zero out the angle. So when you're sitting here for 15 seconds and you zone out, and then you have to switch to the other side and you're like, oh, you might forget which ones you've done. Don't be lazy on engine assembly. Mark what you've done so you don't have to second guess. I can see I have marks at each bolt. I have 1 mark at every bolt. Now I know I'm on the last torque sequence of the head, which is 180 degrees. Okay, let's double check, make sure we got 2 marks next to all of them. We do. The head is torqued. All right, with the head torqued down, we're gonna put our intake camshaft back on, and then our exhaust camshaft, and then our eccentric shaft. And then we can do the servo motor and the injectors and all of that. But first, just gonna take this stud off and put the intake and exhaust camshaft back on. So we got our eccentric shaft and our needle bearings that ride on actual bearings. So I'm going to lube all of that up. I'm going to lube bearing that's on our ledge, the eccentric shaft, the needle bearing itself. So I'm going to lube it all up, bolt it on, and I will lube the caps as well. The ledge is lubed and the eccentric shaft itself is lubed. Time to put our needle bearings on. These are super easy. They have ridges on both sides and a gap in the middle. So you just pull them apart, set them on. As long as they don't wiggle back and forth and pop off, they are on correctly. And I'm just gonna start with the middle here. General rule, usually just start with the middle. Put our cap on. Just gonna get these finger tight so that this is held in place. Perfect, now I can lube up the rest of these caps, put them all on, tighten it down. Just getting them snug with the impact. These are only 10 Newton meters. I double checked, 8.5. Eccentric shaft reinstalled. This should spin very freely. There's nothing holding any tension or weight on it. And I would say that's true. With the eccentric shaft in, we can put our intake camshaft back on. So I'm just gonna lube the ledge, lube the camshaft, lube the caps, bolt it on. Same thing as the eccentric shaft. When you're installing your intake camshaft, to get the timing correct, this data code should be facing up. Remember, these are all numbered. So this cap has a number 3 on it. So we go 1, 2, 3. So I install this one here. So we put intake camshaft on, cap 3 on the 3rd ledge. Torque spec for the intake camshaft caps is the same as the eccentric shaft, 8.5 Newton meters. I grabbed a inch-pound torque wrench just because the foot-pound one is just so low in the range that it just doesn't click. So I'm gonna double check all these and start again here. If I would have just went for it, I would have snapped a bolt. Intake camshaft torqued down. Just gonna quick check and see if it spins freely. It does, so we're good to go there. So now we can go ahead and do our exhaust camshaft. Get all of our rollers back into position here. Make sure they're snapped on. And grab our bottom ledge, snap it into place. Wipe off all that old oil and get some assembly lube on it. Rinse and repeat, same thing, different side. We got the same data code on the exhaust camshaft, and then we just put on our top ledge. Torque sequence for this is into out, and it is 8 Newton meters, same as the other shafts. Another thing to note here is that these flat ledges must be aligned. Of course, there is a special tool for this, and I don't have it. So we're gonna do our darndest. We're gonna do our dangest goodest to line them up. And if it's not good enough, we'll have to buy a tool. I'm gonna leave this wrench on here while I'm tightening this down. The lobes on cylinder 6 are pointing straight down. So when I'm tightening it down, it wants to go one way or the other. So I'm gonna leave this wrench on there so that I can straighten it out if I need to while I tighten this down. Oops, see, that's what I mean. There we go. So get that right back in the middle. So again, you go inside out, and it is 8.5 Newton meters, or in this case, 75 inch-pounds for me. Honestly, after bolting it down, it's pretty straight. I'm just gonna send it without the special tool. Obviously, I can't recommend that you guys do that. Buy the special tool, do it right. Exhaust camshaft torque down. I'm gonna leave this in here just in case it does pop to one side or the other. Until I get my timing lockdown tool on, then I will take the wrench off. I forgot some head bolts, so we're gonna do that now. Look, I saw these on the floor, I'm like, oh, definitely need to do that. Luckily, the torque sequence is not out of order, everything's still okay. You still torque these inside to out, and then you torque these after. So nothing that I've installed afterwards would have affected this part. So we have 4 bolts total for this front timing area. 3 are longer than the others. The longer ones go on this far side and on the front, and the shorter one goes on the shortest portion. So 2 long in the front, 1 long in the back, and then the short one down in the side there. And then these get torqued to 22 Newton meters or 16 foot-pounds. And you do the 3 longer ones first and then the short one. Now our head is torqued down. It's time for another major component. We are doing the timing. We covered how to set the timing for your camshafts when you're installing them. Just make sure those data codes pointing straight up, and then you have the flat spots on the side. So now we're gonna grab our timing tool for the N55 to lock our camshafts in place so we can put our sprockets on. So we just slide our wrench out. Both of our data codes are straight up, and we slide our timing locking tool on. Make sure you slide it on evenly. So now our camshafts are locked to the correct timing. Now we have to lock our crankshaft to top dead center, which we are on the intake side. In this little crevice here, we just pull out this brown plastic piece and we slide in our locking tool. When you get your locking tool in place, just make sure that you can't move your crankshaft in either direction, and that's when you know you'll have your crankshaft in the correct position. All right, a little bit of a change of plans. So we have our timing locked, we have our camshafts locked into place, and we have our crankshaft locked into place, but I'm actually missing the tool to lock the flywheel in place for me to take the crankshaft bolt off and obviously to put it back on. So while we wait for our flywheel locking tool, we will go back up to the head, and we're gonna start by getting our retainer springs back bolted into place. Now I'm sure you guys just recently saw this process of taking this out, and it's very similar to the process of installing it. Slide the spring into the clamping spot of the tool, tighten it down the screw, and we're just going to do the opposite from before. Before we squeezed it, loosened the bolt, and released it. This time we are going to squeeze it, lock it in place, and bolt it down. So we start it by hand, get it snug, and torque it to 10 Newton meters or 86 inch-pounds in my case. And then we can release the pressure, take off the tool. After you mount it, just do a quick visual inspection to make sure that your spring retainer is in that little slot and that your intermediate levers are flush on the eccentric shaft. That's one done, and now you know how to do it. I'm just gonna knock out the rest quick. After each one, I'm just spinning the eccentric shaft to make sure it is operating correctly. So with this camshaft locking tool on, we can't get the retaining spring tool into place. So we have to take off the locking tool to do this last spring. We got our retainer springs on, and I've triple checked every intermediate lever. It's in place and everything rolls smoothly. Obviously there's spring tension on this now, so like right now, cylinder 3 valves are opening while I'm rolling this back and forth. So I would say we're good there. Next we'll do our servo motor. First step of putting the servo motor back in is we need to get the eccentric shaft gear out of the way. So what they say to do is we're gonna put the stopper closer to the intake side on. Now with this one in, what we gotta do is turn the eccentric shaft down to that stopper, put this stopper in. Now this does a couple things. One, our eccentric shaft is stuck in between these two stoppers. That's good because when this is under spring tension, it can spring back and forth. And if you remember, I broke my last eccentric shaft because when it was under tension, it snapped and hit the stopper and broke that piece right off. So with both of these stoppers on and the eccentric shaft in between, the gear is out of the way, so we can put our servo motor on. Now we can torque our servo motor to 10 Newton meters. Now we can take the stopper back off and get the eccentric shaft gear and the worm gear on the servo motor back mated together. It's important that you have a wrench on the end to hold this snap so you don't break anything. So I'm gonna have to hold this while I get the stopper out, and then we will slowly release this pressure while we turn this to get the worm gear and this back in place. So holding the eccentric shaft and the stopper's coming out. Now with the stopper out, we can swing this eccentric shaft back into place and turn our gear at the same time, turning it all the way until the stopper is on the other side here. Now we can put the stopper back in place. And now we want to release the tension back to this other stopper. There we go. Now we can put our spray nozzle back on, and the torque spec for the spray nozzle is 10 Newton meters or 86 inch-pounds as well. All right, with our servo motor back installed, we can now work on getting our injectors back in. Before I continue on with the rest of the head build, I have an oil can here, and I'm going to just make sure everything is nice and lubricated before I put something on and makes it so I can't get to it. Oiling everything up here is just extra safe. You saw I lubed up the camshaft and the lobes. You saw I lubed up the eccentric shaft and all the lobes. Now I was just spraying some oil onto the valve springs and the rollers and the intermediate levers. On top of all of that, when we first go to start the motor, I will disable the fuel, just like we did for the compression test, and have the starter crank over the engine to make sure that we have proper oil on first startup. So these are all just precautions to make sure we are well lubricated for first start. Now this is a mating surface that has a gasket. So we're gonna make sure we clean our mating surface, our gasket, and then we can bolt this on. Not 100% sure if it matters, but in the assembly instructions, it says put that thicker part of the gasket over the hole side. So just slide the gasket over the dowels with this thicker part to the right. These bolts get torqued to 8.5 Newton meters, or in my case, 75 inch-pounds. With that torqued down, we are ready to install our injectors. If you remember in the teardown video, I labeled our injectors 1 through 6, so I will be putting them back in the same spot. Before I install them, I'll quick show you when we put this cover on, you'll notice that we have a slot for our injector and then a slot to the bottom left of the injector, and that's where the plug-in goes. So when I'm putting this in, I have the plug-in for the injector at the bottom left corner. Honestly, it doesn't even seem like you need the slide hammers. You just slide them into place. There's no need for a special tool. Push it down, and then you're gonna have a bracket mounted anyway. Next up, we have our injector holders. These, you have this middle tang or prong in the middle, and then we have these long bolts to hold that down. Okay, so with our injectors in and the metal plate that holds the injectors in, you only want them hand tight so that you can still turn your injectors. Because what you're gonna do is you're gonna put this top plate on, And now we're gonna put this metal bracket on over the injectors. If you notice, it has flat spots on the side that line up with the injectors. So the reason we're only hand tight is so that we can put this on and turn the injectors if we need to. We got this little metal piece that goes on top. It has a little hump in it. Make sure the hump goes up. And now we got the bolts for this. So we have 3 bolts in each, one of which is a stud and a nut. And the stud and nut goes on the top right corner. Now with our 3 bolts on each one, hand tight, we can take off this middle bung. Now with our bungs out, we can torque our injector holders to 13 Newton meters or 115 inch-pounds. With those torqued, we can put our bungs back in. Now we're torquing down our 3 bolts and our stud to 8.5 Newton meters or 75 inch-pounds. And finally, we just torque down this bung to 25 Newton meters or 18 foot-pounds. All right, and that is basically the head install complete. Let's just move over to do our timing. This is that flywheel or flex plate locking tool that I mentioned before. The locking pin wasn't really sturdy enough to hold taking the crank bolt off. I've seen a couple people do it with just the locking pin. Mine wasn't working out, so I bought this flywheel locking tool. I would recommend you do the same so you don't ruin your flex plate. I have the locking pin in, so I know our crankshaft's at TDC, and then we just put this flywheel holder or locking tool in place. Now we get to do the very exciting / scary part of taking out our crank bolt. I've heard people on forums say that they needed a 2-foot pry bar on top of like a 4-foot cheater bar. We'll see if I can get it off. Our camshafts are locked in time. Our crankshaft is locked in time. Let's see if we can get this bolt off. Well, I had my body weight on it and that didn't take it off. So I'm going to need a cheater bar. I'll try this. The setup really only gets us an extra, it gives us almost another foot. So let's see if we can do it with this. Woo! Yeah, that's good stuff. Woo! All right, that's all we needed. Just needed that extra foot. Crank bolt coming out. Now we can slide out this hub. So now we are installing our new chain and our new timing chain guides. When you're installing this gear into the new timing guides, make sure the teeth are facing the front of the engine. See how it's got this ridge? That ridge goes in, not out. So we slide our chain down into our timing chain guide. We get our sprocket on the chain, and then that'll click into place here. So it should look something like this. Now we can get our top piece on here, and that's just got these 2 little slots on the front and back that it sits on. With our new timing chain, our new guide, we are ready to slide this down into the engine. With our timing chain in place and our hub back on, we can just hand tight our new crank bolt. Now we can get our 2 bolts to hold the top here in. And now we have these 2 studs. The shorter one goes up top and the longer one goes in the bottom. So let's start with the shorter one here. For the short one on top, you need a longer Torx bit because it is pretty deep in there. And without this long Torx bit, the head of a short one gets stuck on the hole. The long one that goes on the bottom, you don't need a long one. So you can technically just buy a really long T40 for the top bolt if you don't want to buy a whole set. These top 2 bolts get torqued down to 8 Newton meters or 70 inch-pounds. This top guide here gets torqued to 14 Newton meters or 125 inch-pounds. Now we can torque the bung down to 25 Newton meters or 18 foot-pounds. All right, now our bottom guide is going to get torqued to 20 Newton meters or 15 foot-pounds. And now we can torque the plug down to 50 Newton meters or 37 foot-pounds. With our chain in place and our timing guides bolted down, we get to do the very fun bolt. So this is torqued to 100 Newton meters and then another 270 degrees. Again, our flex plate's locked to top dead center and locked in place so we can torque this down. So 100 Newton meters, 270 degrees. Let's see if we can do it solo. Okay, that's 100 Newton meters. Now 270 degrees. That's 120. Ah, 220. Oh boy. Oh, it's just rolling. My engine stand's just rolling on me. All right, I'm breathing heavy. That was pretty tough. That was a lot of pulling. Honestly, the hardest part was my engine stand rolling around on me. So, but with that, crankshaft bolt is torqued back up to the top of the engine here. With our guides in, crankshaft bolt tightened, we get to put our cam adjusters on. With mine, it's pretty easy to tell which one goes where because I bought a nice shiny one for the intake side. However, if you forget which one's which, they will have the word EIN, ein, and OUS, aus. Ein is intake, aus is exhaust. So we're gonna put our ein on the right side here, and we can get our bolt started. Leave it loose so you can turn it, as we'll need to put our timing tool on and get everything positioned correctly. But with ein on, we can put aus on. Shouldn't be too difficult without the chain tensioner in. All right, now to put our alignment tool on for our cam phasers. We have this little hole on this cap. Okay, with those two dowels in our cam phasers, we can tighten this down. Now we can put our chain tensioner tool on. This first bit goes all the way in, and then the stud here gets torqued to something insane like 1 Newton meter. I am just going to do that. Yeah, that's definitely, boop, 1 Newton meter. Now with our chain tensioner tool on, we can torque these bolts to 20 Newton meters or 15 foot-pounds. And then an extra 180 degrees. Now with our cam phasers bolted in, we can take out our chain tensioner tool and put the actual chain tensioner in. Look how beautiful this nice new shiny one is. And we torque our chain tensioner here to 55 Newton meters or 40 foot-pounds. All right, and that would complete our timing chain install. Now we can take off our 4 tools. We have 2 up here on the camshaft. We have the pin locating top dead center on the flywheel, and then we have our flywheel holder tool over here. So let's take all 4 of those off. With all those tools off, we rotate our crankshaft twice, which will mean our camshaft rotates once, and then we recheck timing, and if the timing is good, we're good. If the timing's good, we're good. Of course, while you're doing this, you shouldn't feel too much resistance here. If something's binding up and it doesn't feel right, double check your work. Let's make a noise here. Okay, it has literally been an hour since you saw that last clip of me. While I was turning the engine over, I kept hearing a thunk or a clunk, something, whatever you want to, describe the noise as. And I thought it was coming from my exhaust camshaft or my exhaust valves. And I took off all of my injectors and all this middle section again that you just saw me put on to inspect it. I didn't see anything, so I took off my cam phasers and redid my timing and my timing chain and my cam phasers again, just because I couldn't find that clunk. And then I finally found what was making it, and it's this. When I'm turning this front metal piece is snapping back and forth. So I finally found what was making the noise, and I Googled it, and there was one person that had a post about this that I found, and it was Simple Car Guy, who is also a YouTuber who has some build videos of an N55, so that's funny that coincidence there. But he said his was doing the same thing. He had a video showing it doing the same exact thing, and he was asking like, what is this? What did I do wrong? Nobody really had an answer. And one of his comments said 2 years later, the motor is still going strong. So I'm gonna follow suit with that and keep on moving forward. Any BMW experts, please in the comments, let me know why this is doing that. Let me know if it's okay. I'd rather fix the problem now if anyone has any opinions on it before continuing. But for now, from what I've seen on the internet, this is fine, and we're gonna continue. So we're going to check our timing. That is where we should be. Right now, cylinder 6 is at TDC, which means cylinder 1 is at TDC, and both of our cam gears are pointing straight up, which means I've rotated this thing so many times, and we're still in time. So after redoing this top section and redoing our timing chain, we are good to go. Everything is in place, everything is happy, everything turns smoothly. We just have that one clunk, and it's only if you turn it fast. That's the crazy part. That's what gets me, is if I turn it slowly like this. No clunk. It turns over super smooth. This thing only clunks if I turn it fast like that. I'm getting some mixed comments on whether it's okay or not. Some people say that it's bad and it'll throw codes. Some people say that it's fine, and once it has oil pressure, that noise will go away. My initial guess was that it was fine and it needed oil pressure. Either way, I don't think it's worth the risk, so I bought some new ones. New used to me, just like the head. These had 80,000 miles on them. They are the newer style, same part number, just newer style, so it should still work. We're gonna throw these on, turn the engine over again. Hopefully the noise goes away. Let's get these cam gears changed out and pray that that noise goes away. I forgot all the torque specs, but I can just go to my YouTube video and figure them all out again. That's great. Old one's off, new one's going on. All right, moment of truth. We got our new cam phasers torqued on. If we hear that clicking, then it's definitely just you need oil pressure, and then everybody knows. So let's turn it over and see if we hear anything. Again, starting slowly, make sure there's no binding. Ah, see, it's still making the noise. Well, who would have guessed? It's still clicking. So the odds of this one also being bad are quite low, I would say. So I'm going to assume that they just need oil pressure and then they stop clicking. But hey, at least they look the same and they're both clean, We're moving on. I ended last video saying I want to test the oil pump and make sure that oil flows everywhere. So I'm going to flip this over, get our oil pan on, flip it back over, put some oil in, and just hand spin it and see if I can hand spin it fast enough to get oil everywhere. Actually, before that, I'm gonna get these two solenoids back into these two holes right there. First, they're a little dirty, so I'm gonna clean them up quick. And with everything a little bit cleaner, we can just slide these into place. And there's just two little bolts to hold these in. Now we can flip it over. If you remember last video, I lost one bolt. So I bought all new ones, 4 Newton meters and 90 degrees. We're gonna go inside out. And then 90 degrees. Now we got this lovely new gasket here. Looks like it only goes on one way. With the gasket on, we can put on our amazingly clean oil pan. No dowels on this, so you kind of just gotta make sure all the bolt holes are lined up. Okay, now we just gotta torque 100 bolts to 8 Newton meters, or I'm going to do 72 inch-pounds. I, again, am going to go inside out. I don't know if it matters. All right, 72 inch-pounds done. Now the short ones are 90 degrees and the longer ones are 180. With the oil pan back on, I can put this pulley's bolts back in. All right, I've decided against trying to fill this with oil and crank it over and see if we get oil everywhere. I'd have to put the turbo on with all the oil lines, or oil will just go out everywhere. So we're just gonna completely assemble it. And when we get it in the car, it'll definitely tell us if we have low oil pressure. So we got brand new gaskets on our valve cover here. I did lube them up. Before I bolt it down, I'm just taking a look at all of the gaskets to make sure they're seated properly. Great, all the bolts are lined up, gaskets in place. Let's
tighten all these bolts down. With all of the bolts snug, and I inspected the gaskets, they look good. There is quite a funky torque sequence for this. They are all 8.5 Newton meters or 75 inch-pounds, but I'll have to put a picture up. You go corner to corner, and then, yeah, it's quite odd. So I got a picture here. I'm gonna follow this torque sequence, and I'll put that up on the screen for you guys. After doing the torque sequence, I figured out the pattern. So you go corner, corner, then you do these middle ones inside out, and then you do the outside ones inside out. We do have a new gasket for the servo motor connection here, so I'll do that quick. Now for the rest of this assembly, I'm actually watching my disassembly video in reverse and putting it back together that way. That way I know I don't put something on that I have to take off later because of another part that has to go on. So now what I did next in the video was take off the front diff. So we're gonna flip back over, put the front diff on. Before we put the front diff back on, I will of course clean it. So here we got a nice before and after. Next on the list is getting our turbo back on. The head that we bought used has some of the old exhaust flanges on here. So we're popping these out because we got new ones of these. I also got new exhaust manifold studs, so I'm gonna zip these out and put the new ones in. Ooh. Okay, not doing that, got it. Tried to use the impact and I snapped the Torx end of it off, so we will not be using the impact on this. So we're gonna break them loose with the channel locks and then we can zip them out with the impact. I'm gonna just clean the mating surface while there's nothing in the way. Much easier to wipe this without those studs in the way. All right, all the new studs in. The nice thing about studs is you don't have to torque them. They just have this little unthreaded part of the stud that'll stop when you get where you need to be. Now I could be wrong here, but I feel like it's going to be easier to install these exhaust manifold gaskets onto the exhaust manifold itself rather than the head. So I'm just going to quick slide all of these on. Okay, with those gaskets on, let's slide the turbo on. And we got new exhaust manifold nuts. All right, we got all our nuts and our 2 bolts on the bottom. Now we're gonna torque inside out, 13 Newton meters or 10 foot-pounds. Now these bottom 2 bolts are 20 Newton meters or 15 foot-pounds. And that would be our turbo back on. Now we can put our coolant feed and return lines on. Put the bottom one on first and then the top one. Now we can torque those bolts to 8 Newton meters or 70 inch-pounds. All right, we can start putting the intake and charge piping back on. Our intake has 1 nut to hold it to the turbo, and then a bolt to hold it to the head. Always be mindful of what you're screwing into and against. For instance, this is plastic. Do not need to tighten it too much. Plastic is not very strong. I am cleaning these parts as we go, so for instance, another before and after. Next up, water pump. It might be a little harder to see how dirty this is, but we'll do it before and after. All right, got our water pump back on. We can put this coolant hose on. Make sure this is nice and snug. Don't want to have to try to tighten this when it's in the car. All right, we pulled the engine with this motor mount on, so a nice before and after. And that should complete most of our hot side assembly. Let's get to the other side. We're gonna start this side off with our fuel lines. All right, we got our main rail on. Now we can put on our individual feed lines to each injector. Now we can just snug all these fittings up.
If there's any leaks here, they are not too bad to get to. So I'm not going to do any insane cranking on them here. We just got this big one at the bottom. There we go. That's our fuel lines back on. Next up, we got our oil cooler slash filter housing. This thing is very, very filthy. A little before and after. This is a huge transformation. I took the oil cooler slash heater off so I could clean in the gaps, and because I have new gaskets on both this surface and the cooler surface, and we have a new sensor end too. Now we can put our refreshed and super clean, well, all right, maybe not super clean, but clean oil filter housing slash cooler back on. All right, it's time to start putting some of our wires on. However, the wire loom's pretty caked, so I'm gonna take some time to clean it as well. It's a little better, but you can't really tell too much. So we're just gonna drape this side over and bolt her down. All right, I'm gonna just start plugging stuff in. All right, I believe most of, if not all the wiring is pretty sorted out down here. I'm gonna be putting the harmonic balancer on. Harmonic balancer torque spec is 35 Newton meters or 26 foot-pounds. And it's very similar to a tire. You go across in like a star pattern for this. Harmonic balancer torque. Next we got power steering pump going on, but obviously it needs to be cleaned. So a good before and after. Next bracket going on with the before and on with the after. Next up, we got the AC compressor. I'm gonna put this bracket on to hold the AC lines. I will have to take it off to get my serpentine belt on, which will actually be pretty soon. I'll get the alternator on, take this off, put the belt on. First, a well-needed before and after. If I remember right, I took off the oil cooler slash filter housing to get the alternator in, but we'll try again. So far, it's looking like, yeah, gotta take that off. It's easy enough. There's no oil in it, so it's literally 3 bolts. It's not like I even have to clean up a mess afterwards. So assembling this is out of order just because I actually took off the alternator in the car, and I forgot about that. And we'll put this back on after the alternator. Now we can get our alternator on a lot easier. I know I got it out. Oh, well, I have no clue how I got this alternator out with this bracket in, but I feel like I'm gonna have to take the AC compressor off. I'm undoing a lot of work that I just did. It's fine, let's do it. Let's get it over with. Now we can take this bracket and just loosen it. So now that a alternator's on, I'm just going to get our belt on at the same time. Okay, I went and looked up the official BMW way to do this, and you'll notice that I have an Allen key in this hole right here, so I don't have to hold the tension. So you just tension it, or well, remove the tension, put in an Allen key, and now it's holding the tension for you. And I was correct in the fact that it's supposed to come off around the alternator, but I'm wondering if it's easier if I put it on here and try to slide it on this idler. There we go, because it's not ribbed. Now let's make sure we're on everywhere and all the slack's up top, and we're flush on all of the pulleys. All the ribs are on every pulley as well, on the crankshaft too. And now we can just bada boom. Much easier using an Allen key to hold the tension, and much easier taking the belt off and putting it on this idler down here because it's not ribbed. Belt's on, so I'm going to get this bolt back in. All right, now we can put on our oil filter housing. With that drive belt on, I wouldn't mind giving the motor a spin and just making sure everything is still spinning freely here. Oh yeah. That's nice. So I'm actually very, very happy that we ended up taking this coolant hose back off to do what we just did. I inspected the O-ring before it put on and I thought it was good, but this second time I took it off, I either pinched it putting it on or it was not good in the first place. So I do have an O-ring that fits on hand, lucky me. And with it lubed up, this should go together nicely. All right, we're back to the hot side here. I forgot this metal shielding that holds our boost controller, but you guys know what's coming next. A nice before and after. The short hose goes in there, and I'm not sure on the exact routing here, but I see a clip, and I'm gonna just snake it right in here, plug it into the wastegate. Oh, there's actually a clip here too that looks like it just goes right here. Okay, well, that makes sense for the routing then. We got clip, clip, and into the wastegate. So that is our boost controller plugged in. Okay, time to connect all of the wiring on the intake side. This will be a little bit for me and really quick for you. Okay, I believe I have enough of the engine assembled to get it back in the car. A lot of the connectors are something I plug into the car from here. So the most difficult part of this journey is going to be me getting the transmission on solo. So you get to watch me struggle. So to get the engine off the stand and on the floor so I can put the transmission on, I'm going to put the intake side motor mount on just like we did before so I can set it on the floor with some wood. Which means this could be the very last before and after before I put the engine in. I just want to clarify, I'm only putting this motor mount on to set the engine on the ground. I actually will take this off when I'm putting the engine in. We can get the engine stand out of our way. So we're resting on wood and the hoist here to try to keep everything balanced. Now, before I put the transmission on, I'm going to change my flex plate bolts. I will be using my flywheel locking tool for this, so I don't have to hold it or have someone hold it. And then I'm going to take one at a time and install my new one with some blue Loctite. Now we're going to tighten just like a wheel in a star pattern to 60 Newton meters or 44 foot-pounds. And then 45 degrees. Okay, now the fun part. With the flex plate torqued on, I need to get the transmission on. Can I do it? Oh yeah, I can do it. Oh, that sucked. I noticed I'm lifting up on the wrong spot. I gotta be up here. So let me fix that. So I got blocks underneath everything, so I can quick switch this around. Silly, silly me. I got wheel dollies. Look at that. Look at that. I'm a genius. Except for I didn't think about it before I carried it over here. Gonna have to just lower the motor more. Now that we're a little lower, how we looking? Close, 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 close. All right, before I get any farther, I need to get the torque converter in. So the torque converter still has fluid in it from when we took it out. I never drained it. So we're just going to slide her back on the splines. There we go. And I can see now, me turning the torque converter is turning the drive shaft on the back. We for sure will be draining and replacing the pan/filter on the transmission, but for now, torque converter is in. Now we just gotta bolt it to the engine. This stuff is always easier with a friend, but we're riding solo. We just see if I can just lower the engine a little bit more. There we go. It's all about finding the right angle so things slide together smoothly here. We have a couple brackets that go on the transmission that I'm gonna quick clean. So here's before and after. Okay, that was
A pain to do solo. I tell you what, where's Keith when you need him? All right, the next part is also gonna be painful solo. I need to torque my bell housing to the flywheel. Okay, I'm gonna try and show you what's going on here with my camera. It's gonna be very hard. All right, so we got our camera here. You're looking at the camera, that's looking at the camera, that's looking at the camera. It's inception, right? Hello. So if we follow the transmission, actually we go down to the block, you'll notice on the bottom there's this hole. If we go in that hole, you'll see your flywheel, and if we look in this hole, you'll see that it's threaded. The threaded portion is actually the torque converter. So there's 6 bolts that connect the torque converter to the flywheel. You just have to go through the hole that's on the bottom of the block, actually the oil pan. There's a hole in the bottom of the oil pan. You go through that, you find your 6 holes in your flywheel, you bolt your flywheel to the torque converter, and it's very, very fun. I sit here, I see if I can feel the hole. If not, I turn the crank until I can find a hole, and then I try to start the bolt, and then I have to do that 6 times to get them all started and tight, and then I gotta do it 6 times again to torque them. You can't really see much here, so I will let you know when that's done. Okay, fellers, we are getting there. So, bell housing bolts are tight, torque converter bolts are tight. 2 more things to put on before we go into the car. And that is these transmission lines that go here and our front prop shaft. Let's get them on. All right, prop shaft back on. Next we'll get this bracket on. So it's like this. All right, if I remember correctly, everything except for this motor mount or engine mount was on when we took it out. So I believe we just take off this engine mount and we're ready to go in. But I'm just gonna do one more quick double check to make sure everything is the way I want it. Okay, from what I can see, everything seems to be in place. As we go in, I gotta plug in the transmission stuff. All right, transmission's plugged in. I'm gonna be routing these wires as I go. Always looking around, making sure I'm not breaking nothing. Oh God, thank you. Okay, I'm putting the motor mount on. Okay, now I gotta do the tranny mounts. Okay, transmission mount is on. Now I can lower the motor mount into position. All right, we're on our engine mounts and we're bolted in on our transmission mount. Boy, do I always forget how difficult this is solo. But if you look, we are done with the engine hoist. Now the very easy process of just buttoning everything up. You know, just plug in all the wires, connect all the hoses, don't miss anything. Oh baby. Next up, starter. We had the starter out so that we could pull the engine. Now that the engine's in, we can put the starter back in. Short bolt goes on the bottom, long bolt is on the top, and it comes from the back through the bell housing. Okay, starter's on and tight. Fuel line going on. Getting stuff figured out. I really haven't plugged anything in. I've just been checking where stuff goes. I'm learning where all the wires go so that when I put the intake on, everything's on. But I'm putting on our starter wire. So we got our starter signal wire in, and we got the power going to the starter. So we can tighten that up. And we can do the same with our alternator wire as well. Alternator wire tight, I'll put the cap back on. Now we can tighten starter. That would be starter and alternator wiring complete. Everything's plugged in. We just gotta put the intake on. Okay, intake is on. Throttle body's plugged in. Yeah, we're getting there. Oh, my back. Okay, major update. I have all the wires plugged in. Unfortunately, the power steering line on the bottom of the power steering pump cannot be tightened unless you lift the motor.
So if you're doing this, word to the wise, tighten that line before you get here, where I am. So now I undid my motor mounts so I can lift the front of the engine here. So now that I lifted the front of the engine, I can get to this power steering line and tighten it. Minor setback. Oh, you guys can't see right now, I'm sorry, but I'm just tightening the bolt. Oh yeah. Okay, that's tight. Bada bing. Now we can lower the motor back down. Now let me tighten those motor mounts again. Okay, fast forward. It's been a bit. We're putting oil in it though. Time for the big one. Oil's in. Everything's hooked up. So I put the downpipe on, got the O2 sensors on. It's gonna be loud because there's no exhaust on it, just the downpipe. So it's cat, turbo and cat, so it might not be too loud. There's no MAF sensor, right? It's just unplugged. It should run with it like that though. I should take off the accessory belt. That way we don't have power steering whine while we do our first start here. All right, so we got the accessory belt off so we don't hear any power steering whine for our first start. The spark plugs are still out because I want to have the starter crank the engine to build up oil pressure and coat everything in oil before we start it. So next, pull the fuel fuses so that fuel isn't spraying everywhere while we're cranking. Put the battery in, crank it. Let's do it. Pulled 3 fuses related to fuel, battery's in. We're cranking, let's see what happens. Okay, it won't crank because it says the transmission is in neutral. So, I'm gonna check the neutral switch, but it might just because there's not enough fluid in it. The transmission was in neutral from underneath, so let's try this again. Okay, yep, now it says we're in park. Okay, that spun very freely because there's no spark plugs. So don't be scared of the noise. It's good, that's good. We're checking for oil leaks. Let's put spark plugs in. We gotta do spark plugs, coil packs, and put our fuel fuses. So our spark plugs are going in. Spark plug 1, spark plug 2, spark plug 3, spark plug 4. Putting the intake on before I forget. 2 more nuts, and we can snug the intake down. Okay, intake is 15 Newton meters or 11 foot-pounds, and you start with the bolt. All right, intake plenum torque down. Now we can get back to the spark plugs. All right, spark plug 5 going in. Spark plug number 6. There we go. Coil pack 1, coil pack 2, coil pack 3, 4, 5, and 6. Get our O2 sensor plugged in, and I think we're ready. I'm gonna go put our fuel fuses back in, prime it, and we'll see if we have any leaks. All right, fuel fuses back in. I'm gonna prime. Let me know if you see any leaks. I don't see any leaks. Moment of truth. Here we go. Okay, it doesn't like the transmission again. Okay, I found it. I put the ground on, but I didn't actually tighten it. All right, let me go tighten that ground, and then I think we're ready to go. Okay, ground is tight. We're doing it. What else could be wrong, right? We're starting it. Here we go. Let's go! I don't see any leaks. We have no oil leaks. That's outstanding. So from here, I have a very long list of things to put back on the car to get this rebuild finalized. Some of it is under the car. So since I can't really film under there, I'm just gonna quick knock out putting the drive shaft, the exhaust, and our new transmission filter and fluids in. And then we'll be back up topside and you guys can see what I'm doing. So let me knock that out quick. Got that axle in.
Next up, we got the charge pipe that goes to the throttle body, but a nice little before and after. Slide it on the intake, pop the clip on, plug in the wire. Now we can put this vacuum line on. Tighten down our power steering reservoir. All right, intercooler going on. A little hint, I'm not gonna clean this for reasons. Okay, intercooler on and charge piping on. Next we got the power steering cooler. Get these hoses on. Radiator next. Side radiator time. Buying them. Just slides right into place. Bottom plastic piece going on. With that bottom plastic piece in, our radiator fan can go in. There we go. All right, next up is our radiator ducting. Now we can put on these metal side pieces. Bada boom. Side air ducts are on. All right, now we got this little baby crash bar thing going on. Now the big crash bar. That's bumper on. Next up, we got fog lights. Now we just pop these grills back in place. All right, so all that's really left for plastic pieces is surrounding the engine here and our wheel wells. I'm going to actually fill all of our fluids before I continue it. Honestly, I should have filled all of our fluids before I even put our front bumper and that radiator shroud on so I could easily see leaks. But most of the hoses are up front here, so I should be able to see them. So let's fill our power steering fluid, and then let's actually pull vacuum on our coolant. Okay, first up, power steering fluid. Now we're gonna pull vacuum with this lovely tool. So we got our coolant reservoir. What we're gonna do to fill this to perfection is pull a vacuum on it. Now, we're gonna open up this valve. Okay, we're at -24, so we're gonna wait just a minute or two to make sure we don't have any leaks. It's been a couple minutes and we held vacuum, so everything is sealed properly. Now, we just fill her up with coolant. So we're gonna open this valve and the coolant will start rushing in. And that looks like vacuum all gone. Hose is full. So now we're gonna close this. That is our coolant full. All right, real quick, I'm gonna go underneath and fill our front diff fluid. I'm gonna reinstall this firewall piece here. 4 bolts holding this in. Let's put some intake pieces on. All right, air box going on. Now these wires can slot onto this. Clean it up a little bit. New air filter going in. Can put these cross braces on. I'm gonna put my wheels on quick. Okay, wheels are on. Now, start the car. Bleed the power steering, warm up the transmission, fill the transmission, get up to running temp, make sure it stays and doesn't overheat. Ready, go. All right, engine sounds great. Power steering, good. I'm gonna have to go buy more. So good there.
let's get our transmission fluid ready. I'm going to be cycling through some gears. Got a little smoke coming out, but that's fine. No fluids on the floor. Oil level is good. I'm gonna cycle through our gears again. Okay, we're back in park. I'm gonna go ahead and check our transmission fluid now. Fill plug is out. No fluid came out, which is expected. Now we just gotta fill it right next to this hot exhaust. Okay, it's full. It's coming out. It's coming out. Okay, fill plug is tight, baby. Let's get out of here. I still hear a squeak. I'm worried a pulley is... I mean, everything is spinning. Looks like it's this bottom pulley. I wonder if I spray it with WD, what'll happen? I don't know if this is a good idea with the WD, but we'll try it. Well, spray WD on that bottom pulley and it stopped squeaking. Let's rev it up, see if anything else happens. Yeah, 240 is when the fan should kick on. We're not quite there yet. We're still not even getting, it seems pretty steady at like 220, 230 degrees Fahrenheit and the fan's not kicking on. All right, good news. I found the nuts. I found my nuts for my hood. Let's put it on. My wife's gonna help me. All right, hood going on. Hold the bottom in. Like you don't have to hold, you can hold the top, that's fine. Just get your nuts started, it don't matter. And then don't tighten them yet, because what we need to do is if you look, there'll be like a scratched spot. You see where it's not black? And that's where they need to go, because that's where the hood was before. So you gotta like lift it until it gets to that spot. It's good to slam hoods. Sliding in a frame just like we did at the beginning of the series. But the series is far from over. No, there's much, much more to do. I tell you what, why don't we talk about what we're gonna do to the BMW F10 while we take our drive. All right, here we are. We did it. Car drives fantastic, shifts good, engine sounds good, rides smooth. I would say this has been very successful. Another very interesting fact, when I dive into the vehicle info on the infotainment system here, it tells you service requirements. And believe it or not, the oil service is 40,000 miles overdue. Now, that explains a lot on why this BMW is $1,000. So let's talk about the future of the BMW. One, it needs a detail. Next video coming to you guys detailing this thing as much as possible. After that, the video I'm most excited about, performance video. We're gonna see what this thing does on a draggy stock. We're gonna put $2,000 worth of mods into it, and we'll do the draggy test again. And we'll compare the difference, see if it's worth it. $2,000 for 100 horsepower, pretty good in my book. Third and final video is going to be a nice little recap. I'll be very, very open on the initial cost of the vehicle, which you guys already know, $1,000. All of the parts I bought and how much. And 3, the tools I needed. That'll be a nice little send-off video for the finale of the BMW. The sad part is, I will have to sell this vehicle. Honestly, I love this thing. I would love to keep it, but I love making content for you guys even more. So if I want to keep making content, I have to sell this and move on to the next one. Fantastic. Right up to the speed limit, not a mile per hour over. Car sounds good. Car shifts good. Again, a very successful rebuild, guys. This has been the best deal of a vehicle I've ever purchased. Until next time, we can always beat it. We're gonna detail it. The previous owners destroyed this interior by smoking in it, leaving their empty energy drinks and pop cans on the floor. Every button sticks, including the center console, making it hard to open or impossible to close because the button gets stuck down. The headliner has something all over it. I'm hoping we can get it out. The engine bay is dusty, but we're gonna try to save it all. Besides the interior being destroyed, the paint isn't too bad, but we have a broken fog light.
The trunk almost knocks you out when you open it. We have this amazing wheel gap where I almost fit my entire head inside. And at the same time that we're doing this detail, we're gonna be fixing all of these issues. The fog light, the trunk won't knock me out, and we just got a little bit of a drop here with some factory BMW M Sport springs. For the detail, we're gonna be starting on the inside of the car. To give myself some room and to make this go a little bit faster, let's pull out our front and back seats. Back seats out. There's our front seat. Well, after taking the back seat out, I can see that the worst is yet to come. We have a foam dart for like a Nerf gun. We have 2 lighters, 1, 2. We have a lit cigarette that he must have dropped, and it's just caked everywhere. I mean, at least I got like $1 and change. And the passenger side is no better. We have the same story. Some cigarettes under the seat, more trash, and just straight gross, just everything. Guys, I hate to say it, but the passenger side even has a mouse problem. Look it. What an odd toy. I don't know who would, how do you even play with this? Let's get started with the front driver's seat. Looks like we can add $1.15 to our budget. You guys think this is still smokable? You think? What do you think? Touch everything, no gloves, guys. What do you think about that? You thought the first video was bad with no gloves. Now I'm taking candy corn out of carpet. Glove free. You know, after just a vacuum, it's really not bad. Obviously, vacuuming did okay until you look a little closer and you remember that, oh yeah, that's gonna be a problem.
Good and bad news. Bad news first. My footage of cleaning the center console is awful. The good news, the center console itself is fantastic. Our little storage container here turned out amazing, and it actually closes and opens. Again, my biggest worry was having to take all of these buttons out, but everything is clicking and operating fantastically. I even cleaned our ashtray, which we definitely know was used in this car. Next up, we just gotta clean all of these buttons. This is all cleaning up way better than I thought it would, to be honest. I mean, all of these buttons don't stick at all now. Wonderful. All right, let's see what we can do with this headliner here.
All right, pretty good before and after on this section. Let's move on to the next one. Here's the before and after on the headliner. It's amazing how well this car is cleaning up. I really didn't know what was gonna come out and what was gonna stay. Okay, dash is clean, center console is clean, headliner is clean. Time to clean the carpets. Starting on the passenger side over here. All right, let's see how this Bissell does. We have our first full dirty water tank, and it's definitely dirty. So I'm gonna go empty this and we'll continue. Another amazing before and after on the driver's side. Okay, we didn't vacuum these inside the car, so here we go.
know, this little Bissell's kicking butt. A nice before and after on the front passenger floor mat. Next up, the driver's side. Our second load of dirty water. So I'm gonna dump this and refill. Okay, driver's side front floor mat. Pretty good, much better than before. On to the back ones. All right, passenger back complete. Onto the last floor mat. And the last before and after on the floor mats. Time to clean the trunk. Here's another before and after, this time with the trunk. All right, let's go ahead and tackle the engine bay. Battery died, had to replace it, so the camera might be in a little bit of a different position. Sorry. Battery dying ruined my perfect shot. How dare it. Okay, I'd say that's a pretty successful engine bay detail. A nice before and after. All right, it's time to wash this thing down. Before we cut and polish, I will be clay barring the car.
Well, I've done like a quarter of the hood so far and really not much coming off. So that's pretty good. Okay, so I'm kind of eating my words. At the beginning of the video, I said the paint isn't too bad. I shouldn't have said that before I actually washed it, because after washing it, we revealed some pretty deep scratches and nicks. These ones here are on the hood. This is on the passenger door. And we have these series of scratches on the trunk. The clay bar did its job and removed all the contaminants. It's definitely smooth to the touch. All right, let's see what we can do with these scratches on the trunk. Well, I would say that helped a lot. There are still some visible scratches that are unfortunately deeper than we want them to be, but it looks much better. Next up, we have a ceramic spray. Let's see how well this does. As you can see from the reflection in the hood, my sealing is very clearly visible. I'd say the buffing and the ceramic spray is doing its job. I'm gonna go ahead and do the rest of the car. With our detail finally complete, we are actually not finished. All of those issues I mentioned at the beginning of the video need to be fixed. Starting with this one. This nice trunk we just cleaned, we can disassemble again. With our old broken ones out, we can put our new ones in. Whew. And our new ones on. All right, and that is a clean and operating trunk. Next up, fog light. The fog light's an easy one on this vehicle. You just pop off this grill. Fog light itself is only 2 bolts. Unplug, plug the new one in. 2 bolts back in. Pop the grill back in. And then all you have to do is wipe up your blood because you cut yourself on the broken glass of the old fog light. Next up, a really easy one. The key fob battery's dead. If you look, that doesn't do nothings. So I just pop the key out, use the key to pry the back off, put a battery in, and now the key fob still doesn't work. I guess I need a new key fob. And last but not least, time to fix this gap. So to put these on the car, it's as simple as raising it, wheels off, struts off, old springs off, new springs on, struts back in, wheels back in, back on the ground. Step 1, chalk the wheel. Step 2, raise the car. Step 3, take off the wheels. What step are we on? I don't know, you just take off the strut. Step 4, I think. And just like that, in a whopping 5 seconds, maybe 30 seconds, we got our struts out of the car and our lowering springs on. Now, in the next 5 to 10 seconds, they're gonna be on the car. Watch this.
And just like I said, we went from a whole fist of wheel gap. You remember at the beginning, a whole fist of wheel gap. Now 2 fingers. That's much better. I won't look like a monster truck anymore.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are wrapping up the BMW series with the finale.
How you like that for a finale?
We have VRSF, Catless Downpipe, Intercooler, MHD ECU tune, XHP transmission tune. With 100 horsepower, faster shifts, and launch control, we should have a very, very good before and after on our hands. I'll have links to the VR Speed Factory, Catless Downpipe, and the intercooler in the description, along with the MHD ECU tune and the XHP transmission tune. I'm hoping that this Catless Downpipe really livens up the exhaust note. Right now, being completely stock exhaust, it's pretty quiet, it's unlively, I'm not a big fan. Before we install our parts and do our 2 tunes, let's first hear what this exhaust note sounds like. Uneventful, right? It sounds like stock. I'm not a fan. So with the Cat Delete, I hope it livens it up just a little bit. Now, let's go do our draggy tests. All right, we're out here to do our 3 stock draggy runs. 300 horsepower stock, around 4,000 pounds. I'm not expecting anything crazy. I think the stock reported quarter mile is like 14 seconds. I'm expecting 14.2. Okay, we're going. First run, not terrible. What did we do? 14.5. So no launch control. Our 60 foot's 2.2, so fully expect that with no launch control. Okay, let's go for run number 2 here. Slow off the start. I'm hoping that launch control really helps us out there. Yeah, 14.6, no faster there. Let's try one more. Okay, going for run number 3 here. .3, 60 foot. It's not getting any better. Launch control is going to be the biggest difference on this quarter mile. All right, there's our 3 runs. We got our 3 draggy runs. Let's head back to the shop, get our performance parts in, and do some afters. I think the difference is going to be massive. Let's get there. All right, let's talk draggy runs. I'll put the 3 draggy runs up on the screen here. All 3 runs I complain about our launch. We have no launch control. I think our biggest time gain is going to be in our 60 foot. Having no launch control, all 3 of our 60 foots were 2.27, 2.27, and 2.31. General rule of thumb is every 0.1 second you save in the 60 foot is 0.2 seconds in the quarter mile. So if we can get that 2.27 down to a 2 flat, we're gonna be 0.6 seconds faster in the quarter. That'll already get us down to a 13-second quarter mile. Secondly, our trap speed in all 3 runs were in the 94 mile per hour, increasing our horsepower by 33%. I'm hoping that gets us into the 100 mile per hour trap speed. Maybe the high 100s, maybe close to a 110. 110 might be pushing it, but 33% increase in horsepower. Let's get that trap speed to at least 100, and I bet we have a mid 13-second car. Best case scenario. That is my current guess. I might eat my words, but I bet we can gain a full second with launch control and 33% more horsepower. I will quickly mention our 0 to 60 mile per hour in our best run was 6.2 seconds. All right, so that is our rundown on our stock draggy times. Not what I was hoping for, but I should have expected these times. I bet we gain a full second in our quarter mile with these parts here. Let's open up the boxes. Small box first. Ooh, baby. All right, we got a new clamp and a new gasket here. We got our beautiful VR Speed Factory Catless downpipe. We got our 2 O2 sensor bungs here. Factory, there's one before the cat and after the cat. Obviously, these can be right next to each other since there is no cat. There's our downpipe. Let's check out our intercooler. First thing in the box is a stencil, so you can spray paint the VRSF logo on the intercooler if you prefer. And here is our beautiful intercooler. Looks like it comes with some brackets and our intercooler. As you can see here, it has a step to it. This top section is thinner. I'm guessing this is going to go in between the radiator and the AC condenser. So radiator in the back, AC condenser in the front, and then we'd have our power steering and our transmission cooler above this section here. So this is gonna give us more surface area, and we'll compare the downpipe and the intercooler when we get the parts out. With our new parts unboxed, let's get the car in the air so we can get started. Okay, front of the car is in the air, popping in for a little bit of an update. I'm actually doing some maintenance along the way here. So as you can see here, we have some metal cross members and our radiator fan shroud out. And that gives us a lot of room up front here to do our tensioner, a couple of idlers, and our serpentine belt. If you guys remember in our first start and drive video, we had some belt noise, it was squeaking, and it was actually our bottommost idler here. This one's pretty rough to spin, and it definitely needed to be replaced. But of course, instead of just buying that one idler, I bought a kit that had both idlers, our tensioner, and our belt. So not really a part of the performance video, but I thought I'd throw it in here quick that I'm doing some maintenance along the way. After I throw these on, I have our EVAP pump that I'm gonna replace in the back, and hopefully that gets rid of our check engine light. So this gets rid of our squeak, and hopefully this gets rid of our check engine light. And just to show you our old vacuum pump and our new one. This was pretty easy to get to. You just take off your rear wheel and your fender liner, and it's located in this corner here. All right, we are underneath the car now. We need to take off the entire exhaust just to take the downpipe off, because obviously exhaust on this car is one big piece and it connects to our downpipe, believe it or not. So starting with this cross member here, gotta take this off to drop the exhaust. Next up, we're going to take the clamp off that's holding the downpipe to the rest of the exhaust. Now to take the rest of the exhaust off, we have 3 hangers holding on the exhaust at the back. Right at the exhaust tip here, we have this nut that's holding on a hanger on both sides. Attached to the mufflers is this exhaust hanger, which is just a bolt on the top. And right next to your rear diff is the 3rd and final hanger. Okay, lastly, the hangers here by the rear diff. A little squirt of WD-40 on these exhaust hangers goes a long way. Now, be safe about this. I know I'm directly underneath the exhaust, and that's, you know, scary. But just take off the exhaust hangers. Wow. And then just bench press it and slide out. That's how they do it in the manual. This is why we took that clamp off on the downpipe right away, because it should just slide out, depending on how rusty your car is. And now our exhaust is off, and I'm stuck underneath it. Just gotta get out. My leg. There we go. And just like that, we have our exhaust dropped off of our downpipe. Disclaimer, if you live in the Midwest like me or anywhere else where they salt the roads, that's probably gonna be a pain in the butt. Luckily, I've already taken this one off when I pulled the engine out, so everything was already free and it came right off. Not even kidding, the first time I did this, it took me at least half an hour, 45 minutes because it was so rusty. So good luck. Now we can take off our downpipe. Here we are at our catalytic converter, or our downpipe. We have a bracket and a nut here. Right past this O2 sensor where my little fingy is wiggling is another bolt or another nut for a bracket. And then we just have our actual clamp right here attaching it to the turbo. So 2 nuts, 1 bolt, and our downpipe should come out. They are all 13 millimeters. Bolts and nuts are 13 mil. Why not start with the easy one, huh? Again, remember,
These are all coming out super easy because I just had this out when I pulled the engine. So these all should be super easy to do. Okay, bottom bracket's loose and our clamp is coming loose. There's our clamp bolt. Okay, just gotta get that top bolt, the painful one. I'm gonna try to use a stubby little 13 mil ratcheting wrench to get this one. There we go, final nut off. This should just come right off now. The clamp is stuck. Or maybe just push on it here like this. There we go. And bada boom. All right, got our old cat out. I'd actually really be interested in weighing this cat and our new downpipe and seeing how much weight we save. All right, after our downpipe, we can take off our intercooler. We just take off this plastic piece. We got Torx bits, one on each side. Then we just have to take off the clips that hold the intercooler to the charge piping, and out it comes from the bottom. Okay, got one side off. My advice was always you gotta push them together, pull the clip out, and then they slide apart. So one side done, just gotta do this other side. All right, there we go. Both sides are off. We just gotta slide it on down. What do we got on? Whew, there we go. Almost knocked myself out. All right, here we have it. We have our old intercooler versus our new intercooler, and we have our old downpipe versus our new downpipe. We're gonna save some weight with our new downpipe, but we're gonna gain some weight back with our new intercooler. I quick weighed our parts here. Let me go over those weights with you. So our stock downpipe weighs 10.2 pounds, our stock intercooler weighs 7.6 pounds, our VRS-F downpipe weighs 4.8 pounds, and the VRS-F intercooler weighs 23.8 pounds. So the stock parts together weigh 17.8, and the VRS-F parts together weigh 28.6. So we're gaining 100 horsepower at the cost of 10.8 pounds, and I'd say that's a very fair trade. Now we can get back to work, put our intercooler in. All right, with a bigger and heavier intercooler means harder install. But let's see how it goes. This is definitely going to be a tight fit. Oh, Jesus. Whew. Come on. Oh, there we go. Okay, intercooler is in and our charge pipes are on. So as you can see here with this intercooler on, it's much deeper, or it's taller, it's lower, it's thicker, so this bottom plastic piece no longer fits. However, I will keep it along with the stock intercooler just in case we ever want to go back. All right, so now that we have our intercooler in, we can see where these brackets they sent us go. We can see bolts here. So they do provide bolts and brackets just to help support the intercooler here. All right, that's our intercooler installed. We got brackets on, charge pipe on. It's not going anywhere. Next up, I got our downpipe and I transferred the O2 sensors over to it already, so we just got to put it on. All right, in theory, this one should be easier to put on than our stock cat because there is so much more room here. Okay, just a little tip or trick. What I ended up doing is using a longer bolt to get the clamp started and squeezed into place, and then you just take the bolt out and then the shorter bolt will fit a lot easier. So we got the clamp on, just got to snug that bolt up and put the rest of our exhaust on. So you saw up there, I got the exhaust resting on the downpipe, so I just lift it up, slide it on, and I'll start by putting this exhaust hanger on. There we go. Got one nut started. Now you want to do these rear diff mounts first-ish because they're a lot harder with the rest of the mounts on. There we go. Exhaust, back on. I spoke too soon. We have one more clamp. That's the downpipe to the rest of the exhaust. So get that clamped, and then I think we start the car and check for any leaks. Bada boom! Intercooler's on, downpipe's on, the rest of the exhaust is on, the O2 sensors are plugged in. That means we're ready. The last thing I have to do to button up is just put that metal bracket that goes underneath the exhaust on, but I want to check for exhaust leaks before I do that, which means it's time to start the car with the new exhaust and see how it sounds. Really hoping it sounds a little bit better. Okay, you know, car sounds a little more lively. Now we're ready to flash the ECU and the TCU. For the ECU, we're going to be using MHD, and for the TCU, we're going to be using XHP. So with the car on, we open the MHD app. Now we should be able to flash a map. Here we go. Select stage 2 plus, and now it's asking what transmission. Let's select auto 8. Now let's do our right. Okay, I read this warning here and it says battery charger recommended, turn off lights, turn off climate control. So we got the charger hooked up, climate control off, and our lights are off. Took 2 minutes and 48 seconds. The MHD and the XHD flash tools are pretty similar. Okay, let's flash this car. I want to do stage 3. All right, we're flashing. We have our MHD tune flash done. XHP is underway. It's already halfway done. We can get this off jack stands on the ground and we can go for our second first drive, but this time with 100 extra horsepower and much faster shifts and launch control. The flashing is done. It's clearing our fault codes and success. We are ready to go on our second first drive with the vehicle now tuned. All right, let's get the window down here. Let's go sport mode. Traction control off. Let's see how it feels. Oh my God, the shifts are so much faster. Oh my God. Pushes forward even when it's shifting. So with the XHP, there's a drag mode, and you can turn off the torque limiting during shifts and you can feel it. Every time it shifts, it pushes forward. It doesn't pull you back, it pushes you forward. That's so cool. It puts you back. Oh, the pulling during shifts is wild. That's so cool. I've never had a car that pushes you into your seat even when it's shifting. That's nuts. I put a community poll out there for people to guess on whether we would gain a quarter second, half a second, 3/4, or a second or more. And so far, a majority of people are putting that I'm going to gain a second or more. And 100% I agree with that. Okay, it is the next day for me, hence new clothes. I don't know if you guys notice how many times I change clothes in one video, but it's often. We are here, we are ready for the after draggy tests. So I drove this car 20 to 30 miles yesterday, romped on it, made sure we weren't gonna have any issues. I did 5 launches, I did 5 rolling anti-lag hits, just to make sure that the car wasn't gonna break immediately. No check engine lights, no issues, no hiccups, no misfires, no any issues with the transmission. I mean, everything's super solid. All right, here we go, pull number 1. Woo. Oh, see that? Just pulls even when it's shifting. Oh, hell yeah, dude. Oh, you guys. Oh, 1.2 second increase. That's nuts. What was our 60 foot? 1.93. I told you. I guess we were gonna do a 2 second flat. We gained 0.3 seconds on our 60 foot, and that brought us down to 13s already. And we trapped at, I don't see our trap, but I think we trapped at over 100. I knew that those were the wombo combo items. If we trapped over 100 and we 0.3 second increase on our 60 foot, I knew we were gonna kill it. That's awesome. Okay, let's go again. Oh yeah. God, it feels so much better, guys. It's nuts, the improvement. All right, so that 60 foot was better by 0.02, so not much better. That 60 foot was better, it felt better. We were going slightly uphill. I don't even know if that's gonna be a valid draggy run. We were going slightly uphill. I bet if it was flat ground, that run would have killed it. All right, so pump the brakes, get it real fucking built up, mash the pedal, let go. Guys, you can tell just from my reaction how much more fun this car is. It's a huge before and after. Whew, I love it. And temperatures are fine, no check engine lights. Let's get back to the shop. Let's go over it in detail. Back at the shop to go over our draggy runs. But first, kind of a surreal moment. We are finishing the BMW. We're finishing the first YouTube series that I've done. It's weird, and I love it. I want to keep going. I want to do more. I want to do cooler stuff. So thank you for those that subscribe. If you're not subscribed, think about doing it. It helps me more than you know. And I want to share content with you guys. It's been more fun than I thought it would be. Honestly, I thought making YouTube videos would be a pain and unenjoyable, and I proved myself wrong. I really enjoy this. I want to keep going. Enough sentimental stuff, draggy before and afters. So I got numbers written down here. We're comparing the best before time to the best after time. Starting from the beginning, we went 0.34 seconds faster in the first 60 feet from 2.27 to 1.93. We went 1.23 seconds faster in the 0 to 60 mile per hour from 6.27 to 5.04. We went 1.15 seconds faster in our quarter mile, going from 14.52 to 13.37, which is 1337 or leet for the nerds out there. And our trap speed was 7.44 miles per hour faster, going from 9.433 to 101.77. So, those of you who voted on the community tab that I would be going 1 second faster or more, you are absolutely correct. Everybody else who thought I was some people thought I was only gonna go 0.25 seconds faster. That's nuts, you're crazy. That hurt my feelings, I took it personally. So there we have it. Back to the sentimental stuff. Subscribe, rate, comment, all the things. It helps me more than you know. But again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.